Welcome back to the Deep Plea. In this podcast, we aim to have deep conversations about all sorts of interesting topics to engage with and learn more from the world around us. My name is Karthik. There on the other side of the mic is Sven.
Hello, hello.
And today we're going to be talking about the corporate world and what lies ahead. I guess for us as we're in our 20s. So it's been a
Yeah,
while. Let's get into it with a quote for today. Sven,
yes.
take it away.
I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers, John D. Rockefeller. Kind of quickly to understand this quote, he started the Board of Education way back. I think it was like, I forget the year, but the idea was that the education system would be an institution that would develop people and kind of bring them to this gate of choices for work. So getting a degree rather than having people kind of learn and like get educated and then have options to do things that wouldn't necessarily benefit. And so he wanted to be able to have this structure where kind of like an assembly line, you have people grow up in the standardized testing and everyone's getting taught the same thing, and then they kind of choose the career path, and that's how it was structured. And in some way you could say that that was for like a structured society and to develop businesses and have people working and stuff. I just think that these days when it comes to corporate worlds, it's a bit different. We see people not liking it anymore. We see people quitting their jobs. So I guess we'll see how modern corporation works. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, when you think about a corporation, right, we think about the big tower and that, if we want to work in that type of place, we try and get to the higher floor, we try and get to the highest floor, maybe. And
Right.
sometimes we may be able to, you know, not be a nation of workers, let's say individually. We try and be a thinker, but we can try and break this for ourselves, but we do have to navigate complex systems within a company and a corporation. So we have to make sure that when we try and be a nation of thinkers in our head, we have to make sure that our superiors are okay with that. And I don't know if that's,
Mm.
I mean, obviously there's a lot more autonomy. I think people are starting to realize that, let's talk about the bright side too. People are starting to realize that autonomy for individual workers is good. It gives them the ability to think, reason, and come up with new and
Yeah.
interesting ideas. Um, but I guess maybe there's a stigma with the big tower on Wall Street, or the big skyscraper in Chicago, or the rich, I don't know, rich cities of
Yeah.
LA or something like that. Just kind of like when you work for this company, it's like you try and just climb up a big ladder, and
Yeah.
hopefully, you know, I guess you're kind of at the whim of somebody with a knife, right? So if you're trying to climb up this ladder, with the corporate world, then the CEO, I guess, can always just cut your hands off, which is
Right.
kind of like it's a weird situation to be in. Let's ask
Yeah.
our easy question for today. What are the benefits and drawbacks from engaging in the corporate world, Sven? Take it away.
Well, I guess socially, of course, you always, like we said about education, you do have a place, a community that you can go to when you work. As we saw with COVID, people working from home a little bit separate. People weren't as social, but they still were kind of happy. But yeah, so a sense of community. And then also, hopefully fulfillment. If you're working for a company in the corporate world that's doing something good, let's say you work for like a pharmacy company and they're developing new medications, and then you think that working there, is fulfilling. You can get a routine out of working for a corporation. You can, go to work, come home, rinse and repeat. Talk to the wife, hang out with the kids. But at least you always know that that's a possibility. That you may not be away for a long time. Maybe if you have like business things in other places, whatever. But you get a sense of routine. You have community. You're socializing. You're seeing new people, and hopefully what you're doing is fulfilling. Um, and I guess the repetition could be a drawback though, because we're not really meant to. I guess we could say that we are meant to repeat. It's kind of how we evolved. We kind of just like would hunt and we'd eat. But I guess now that we're kind of, self-aware of that, it may seem now repetitive because it doesn't benefit us as immediately as eating food would or having a partner and stuff like that. So I think that maybe that could kind of lead to depression maybe, or, various things like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we'll start with the benefits. Obviously, you have a good structure. You have, good things set up for you, 401k, whatever it might be. Um, I guess you just have to I guess the drawback is you set up that 401k and you set up your retirement, but you have to reach a certain age in order to actually get access to any of that. So
Right.
it's like they try and delay your gratification, but maybe it's too long, right? You can delay gratification for a while to try and increase our future benefit. But if we delay it
Right.
to 40 years, maybe that's a bit too long, and I think we could definitely ponder about that. Uh, and when we talk about the negatives, I guess it's just you're just working in, excuse me, I have some allergies. You're just working in a complex system. So it's kind of hard to like how we said earlier, kind of be that independent thinker that you could be perhaps
Right.
starting your own brand, starting your own business, uh, in the especially when you try and start your own business from a company, because most people will start from a company and then maybe they will, decide that they want to form their own business. And I got this from a The How of Business by Henry Lopez. They had, or I guess there was this guy. His name was Henry Lopez, excuse me, and he was trying to kind of start his own craft, start his own business while in the workplace. And he had said that like when coworkers kind of realize that you're doing something outside of work, they kind of sense this kind of disloyalty upon you, which is like an interesting thing because I think
Interesting.
as humans we're not like we want to explore, right? Even
Yeah.
like our ancestors wanted to explore new territories, new lands. So now we want to explore perhaps new intellectual property that we could create and just things we could do. Um,
Yeah.
and I think just a negative is that just maybe this is a bit a bit unrelated, but I think it's a good thing to say is that if you're stuck in a job, your masculine pursuit of freedom is forever stifled because you're kind of like bonded to that organization and it's not like
Mm.
in your control. So if you're searching for freedom and you're at a company, there's always that guy with the knife, back to the same ladder analogy, guy with the knife, he can cut your hands off. And that's not
Yeah.
freedom. That's just like hoping you don't you know, get your hand chopped off. But let's
Yeah.
ask
Yeah.
the hard question for today. How does everyone's perception about being a hard worker play into the narrative of working perhaps unnecessarily long days and weeks at the office, especially in the corporate world where results are always desired? So I'll start with this one for today. So one of my friends, I asked him this question, and he's going to be at an internship at Rivian for the summer and fall. And he said, Rivian has done they've had these particular steps in order to like ensure the betterment of the health of their employees. So he said, okay, if you're a full-time employee, you get unlimited time off. I'm not too sure about the logistics of how that all plays out in the company, but he had said that Rivian, with that and other forms of action, have been able to they've been able to set themselves up to kind of overtake in the car company, I guess in the car scene. And he was saying those little steps that they did in order to try and perhaps break the stigma of the corporate world. Where those results are always desired. They said, "Hey, I don't know exactly how it works because obviously you still want results, but
Hmm.
they said, hey, you can take this unlimited time off, work on yourself, and then you can come back and produce. I would imagine you come back and you produce better results." Sven, what do you have
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah, it's interesting the idea of like having time off, but maybe having a deadline so it's like based on production performance. And I think it's interesting because no matter what, there always will be a deadline. And we always think about like in the workplace anxiety, having to present the report to the CEO. Like we always have these things that we're gonna have to keep doing. But I think that since people deal with it differently, you could have people process like doing those deadlines with the time off better. And then they could actually come into work and be more clear headed. Whereas if they were forced to come in for that shift, they might not be in the right headspace because they only had like that night to think about it and stuff like that. So I think that it's good because when you can have time off to process certain things, maybe even think about your production, like what you're doing and all that stuff, you actually, you could actually have a better outcome. And they say like in Silicon Valley that the way it's set up is that there's like lounge chairs and there's no like immediate, you don't have to do anything immediately. You can kind of like hang out, work, talk with friends. And they see production there too because it's not as strict as like, it's not as like tedious, all this like bosses looking type of thing. And I think that maybe eases people's minds and can help with productivity. Being able to kind of just like walk out, go to the lounge, have coffee, talk to someone without having to think about work as an immediate threat, because I would consider, it's a threat. You don't necessarily want to be doing it, but it can kind of help that person mentally and maybe have a better outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, when you try and be a hard worker, obviously we know diminishing returns comes quite quickly.
Yeah.
We can have a maybe good stretch of 4 hours doing very productive work. And I think that's what a production-based environment could be. But especially when
Yeah.
you're placed at a job for 8 hours, right? And you're expected to, produce high quality work throughout that whole
Yeah.
8 hours. it's a little bit unrealistic. So you
Right.
can obviously in an 8 hour workday, you can do what you need to do in less than 8 hours. Assuming you have a certain task. Let's say you have two tasks that you need to do. Instead of setting up the workplace such that, you have these two tasks, it's more like you're here till 5, which is like
Right.
not really even what the company is going for. That's just kind of seen as like the accepted standard. So I
Yeah.
guess it's interesting if you kind of set up your workplace as a means of production instead of just a means of accumulating things on a time card.
Yeah, and it's also kind of funny because like my mom would pay me in the past to do yard work, and she would pay me by the hour. So as a joke, I would always just kind of like rake slowly or do something slowly,
Yeah.
and like I'll be outside for like 3 hours, even though I probably could have done it in 30 minutes. But it's just kind of this idea that because it's by the hour, it's not even necessarily about the task; it's just about the time. Whereas, if it was just like do this task and you make $50, then you do it to the fullest extent and you get your money and go. And I think it's kind of that same dynamic where it's like you don't feel like you're doing anything to do it for you. You kind of just feel like you're there for the time. And that's, you get the money, get out, blah, 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 that type of thing.
Yeah, especially if we're trying to complete, like, let's say we're trying to complete a side project and we don't have like an incentive to spend more time on it, right? Because we're not maybe not getting paid immediately. Then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, you spend like an hour of dedicated work every day. You say, all right, I'm gonna get this done today, or I'm gonna work on this part of my side project today, and it's really just you going for that result. But also, you're not saying like, let me spend a whole 8 hour workday, of unproductive. Like you would never say that for your side project. Like, let me spend a whole
Yeah.
8 hour
Yeah.
workday of like lackluster production to like
Right.
to to make little pecks at it. You'd be like, let me
Yeah.
spend 2 hours of like hard focus, do not disturb mode,
Yeah.
going hammering at the task. I guess when it just comes to, yeah, like how you said, just raking, you just rake
Right.
slower and be like, yeah, mom, there's a lot of leaves out here. It's just, I don't know what happened. They keep falling. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it just frames your perspective. And then you do things with a new mindset. Like you can do anything with that mindset then. Uh,
Yeah.
eh, yeah. And then I guess it's just there could also be some aspect of like let's say you work an 8 hour workday and you get your tasks done in like 4 hours that you just clock
Right.
out for like the last four and like
Yeah.
but you still get paid. So like maybe it's increasing your free time could also be another
Right.
aspect we could touch on, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, an 8-hour shift, like a whole day, like it just seems grueling as well because like you're kind of like mandatory have to stay for that amount of time. Whereas like if you just thought about it, you woke up and you're like, you know what, let's rip this task, let's do it. And then you get there, you're hyped because you know that you just get the task done and then you're good, rather than like having to wake up, prepare your whole day for 8 hours. It's like it's not as hype energy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, you're not going in with a clear objective. You're just going in with like let's just see what there is to do today. I don't
Yeah,
know.
another
Let's,
day.
another day. I mean, even that's the same thing with school. I mean, I can definitely say that I go to school and then instead of like especially with school tasks, I'm like not always like, oh, let's go knock out this homework or knock out
Yeah.
this project. I'm kind of just like, I guess we'll get through the day and like,
Right.
just 'cause like, I have a class at like the start of the day and then the end of the end of the day kind of. So it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of just feels like that grueling kind of aspect. So
Right.
it's just hard to
Yeah.
like I don't know, it's just hard. But
Right. It would be interesting too, like if you compare this to that, where it's like, let's say that you are able to take a test whenever you want, like sooner than there's a deadline for. So you think like, oh, okay, so I have all this schoolwork, and it's like right now you're like timed. It's like stretched out with like a time, like almost like a shift, where blah blah. Where you could say you and your friends want to go on vacation for a week, and so you guys are able to study really hard, take the test sooner, if you do bad, that's on you. But if you just really try hard and do well, then now you have time off because you kind of you were able to do things faster and get it done. Other like whereas you'd have to go to class, sit down, the teacher would have to teach you the same pace as everybody else, and then that whole thing.
yeah, I get you. I
Yeah.
think that's a good place to end for today. I guess
Hmm.
we just have to think that I don't know there is a corporate world out there and maybe it's not necessarily inherently bad to join it, especially with new changes that my friend is saying at Rivian and we're gonna see, I guess, just how people start to realize, like how we talked about the autonomy of
Right.
workers
Yep.
and like letting them do their own thing and create. I guess at the end of the day, we want Rockefeller might be outdated now,
Yeah, hopefully.
hopefully, right?
Yep.
But that's up for time to tell, huh?
Yeah, it is. And with the age of AI and technology, things will speed up. So hopefully our production does as well.
Well, hopefully we can use our AI to think better, not just work
Right.
better. Thank
Be
you
a
for
good tool.
watching.
Yep.
See you in the next one. Oh
Yeah.
man.